As Israel says it is preparing for the next stages of war, hospitals and doctors already overwhelmed are preparing for another influx. After receiving thousands of applications from foreign doctors, nurses and other medical professionals to come and help out in hospitals and clinics, Israel's health ministry has decided to allow many to come. Dr. Simon Nothman was called up to reserves as a doctor in a home front search and rescue battalion in Israel. He joins me now live from near the northern border. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. So you got the call up to help. What was going through your mind?
My call up was a couple of days after the initial carnage, when my battalion is active near the northern border. And as it became more evident that this is this is a conflict that was likely to spread, not just from Gaza, but also to the northern border with involvement of Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. From there, my group was called up to assist as well.
And how do you feel about being out there in such a difficult circumstance?
It's very tense. There's a lot of unknowns. Hezbollah has shown that it is interested in being involved, but at the moment, only to a very minor degree. But it's a very difficult time for the whole of the country. We are bewildered and in mourning and hurting. And now I'm away from my family. I've left them alone, and hopefully they're as safe as can be. But it's a very challenging time for us all.
Doctor, tell us about the role you're playing then in the battalion and what you and that battalion are doing.
So our battalion is a primarily civilian-facing battalion. We're involved in search and rescue from the remains and rubble of destroyed buildings, and as has been evident, one of the main modes of operation of Hamas and Hezbollah is through the use of rockets and missiles. And one of the fears is that there will be mass casualties from collapse of buildings. And the role of my group, and particularly as a medical professional within that, is to reduce the loss of life from such scenarios.
Tell us what scenes you're facing when you go out there and you try and save people, and you're looking at this rubble, these buildings. What sort of scenes? Can you describe it to us? What they look like?
Well, thankfully, I'm on the northern border, and so far it has been relatively quiet here. While there have been a number of alerts and interceptions of incoming missiles, it has been, relatively speaking, quiet. We've mostly so far been involved in operations with the civilian community, strengthening them, preparing them for eventualities that unfortunately we may well face, and again trying to prevent the loss of innocent civilian lives. We have been keeping abreast of what's going on in the south, and like you say, the gruesome scenes that have been evident there, and using the understanding and the learnings from those scenes to assess how we might best approach the situations that may develop here. But thankfully, so far, we haven't needed to be activated in a formal sense.
What's the feeling then in the north? How are communities reacting to what they're seeing happening in the south?
Like I said, everybody is distraught. Israel, as much as sometimes we have our challenges between us, is at the end of the day a big family, and everybody, whether they actually know people in the south, though almost everybody does, feels very closely with the plight of the people there. Aside from which, with the number of people that have been called up to reserve service from all over the country, everybody knows family and friends who are there, unfortunately, in harm's way, and with serious fears of what may happen to them.
How afraid are you at the moment? You know, I know you are in the north, you're not in that south, but are you scared?
I think perhaps more than anything else, the unknown is scary, because so much of what is potential here and what may happen is not in our hands or even the hands of our leadership, but rather in the hands of terrorist groups who, at the best of times, are unpredictable. It's very hard to know which way things are going to go, and that's what people, I think, find most challenging. Yes, there's definite fear around us, yet at the same time, various communities have really been brought together. There's been a lot of cooperation, a great spirit of volunteering, and it's really brought people together. But at the same time, obviously, very fearful for what might eventuate.
Are there enough doctors or medical professionals like yourself at the moment? Have you got enough resources?
It's very difficult to know. It all depends on what will happen. If we find ourselves in serious trouble, then no number of doctors and no amount of medical equipment will be able to do the work that will be needed to be done.
I have to ask you, what happens if you are faced with a situation where you need to treat or help a terrorist who's been injured? What happens in that situation? The laws of war indicate that our role is to treat them, and that's how I was always trained, both through all my medical training and also through my training in the Defence Forces. And as much of an internal struggle that may be, at the end of the day, one's role as a medical professional is to save life, regardless of the identity of whose life it is. It's a very difficult situation out there, Dr. Simon Nothman. We really appreciate you joining us. Stay safe, and hopefully we can stay in touch. All the best out there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Danica. May we all know quieter times.